Becoming Undone is a podcast for those who dare bravely, risk mightily, and grow relentlessly. Join me, Toby Brooks, as I invite a new guest each week, where we examine how high achievers can transform from falling apart to falling into place. And I will tell you, today's episode is a special one for me because I get the chance to reconnect with someone I've known for a long time. And I've had the privilege of teaching early in his journey, and it's been really exciting to see how he's grown since those days. So joining me today is Dr. Shawn Eagle. He's now an assistant professor and researcher in the Department of Neurological Surgery at the University of Pittsburgh. He's a renowned traumatic brain injury expert. He's got more than 150 papers to his credit and counting. I'm sure there's several in the hopper right now. He's considered a global expert on concussion, but his journey today traces all the way back to his experiences as an athlete. So Shawn, Dr. Eagle, it's great to have you on the show. Welcome to Becoming UnDone.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you reached out to me and I was super excited because your story was one that stuck with me. Like in a given year, we would have 100 applicants for one of the student positions in our program. And there was an essay associated with that. And I distinctly remember yours, even to this day, how you were a leader on your football team in college and how concussion had really kind of derailed your journey. And I recall us having conversations about how that was influencing you even then, and to see what you've done with it since then is even more exciting for me. So I always start with a little bit of a softball to begin. What did you want to be growing up and why? And what did you believe that version of you would finally prove?
I don't really know ultimately if I knew what I wanted to be. I eventually landed on deciding I wanted to be a physician's assistant. And I went to college, and they actually had an athletic training major at Denison University. It's a very small liberal arts school in Ohio. And, I had 6 other people in my class. And, the combination of football and maybe being on my own for the first time led me not to perform as to my best. And my grades were fine, but that was right when physician's assistant school was like really getting hot, and the criteria to get in were strict. And so that was quickly not becoming an option for me. And it was my mom who said, you have this athletic training degree, you should try to get a master's in it and practice. And I thought, that's a pretty good idea. I should try to do that. And that's what led me to apply. And at the time, there were only like 15 programs or something like that across the country. And I had gone to a big high school and a very small college, and I wanted to feel what it felt like to be a student at a big program with big time sports, and Texas Tech was the best option of those. So that's how I ended up in Lubbock.
Yeah, that's great. I know you were a collegiate athlete. Briefly talk me through your journey from high school sports to college. I mean, you kind of alluded to the master's degree, but really the core of this show is how setbacks that we face along the way can really help set us up for success. So kind of talk me through that process as a high school athlete and beyond, and how that maybe set the stage for what was later to come.
Yeah, sometimes things just kind of line up in an interesting way, and hopefully we'll get to this, but you've had an influence on my life, whether you knew it or not. Um, and let me go back first. So we were the third biggest high school in terms of student population in Western Pennsylvania. Western Pennsylvania is a big time for high school football, sports in general, but definitely football area. I'm not sure it quite lives up to Texas high school football, but
Depends on who you ask.
some of the all-time football greats have come out of Western Pennsylvania. And, football was a big deal, and it felt like a really big deal to us. And, thousands of people would come watch us play our games. And, you don't know this at the time, but I played tight end and defensive end. And when I lined up at tight end, the person to my left played for the Green Bay Packers for several years.
Wow.
And the person to his left played for the Minnesota Vikings for several years and
Wow.
blocked for Adrian Peterson. We had big time athletes all over the place. And, um, it felt very, especially to a young kid, it felt very important to me.
Yeah.
And, I had a series of injuries my senior year in high school, and I had a conversation with my parents. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Like I was pretty broken down by the end of my senior year. Like I'm not sure I want to do this in college, and they both were pushed me into doing it, and I'm glad they did. And I landed at a small Division III school for football and went from, Friday night lights where it felt like this big, huge event in the center of the town and, playing for 40, 50 people on Saturday afternoons at a small school. And, I was like, what did I do here at first? And then I kind of fell into it. I got invested in changing the program's ways. We were very middle of the road for a long time, and now they're consistently in the top end of their conference, which is something I'm proud of because I helped, at least from a student athlete perspective, lend my uh, recommendations to a board that hired the coach that coached my senior year and is still there. His name's
Yeah.
Jack Hayden,
Wow.
a great guy. But in terms of how football led me here, my senior year, I in camp I had a pretty severe AC joint separation in my shoulder. I was out for 6 or 7 weeks of my senior year, and not I'm not going pro. That's all you get. So I was missing at least 6 games. I was captain of the team. I was really upset about that, but I focused on getting better and setting up a plan so that I could come back and make the most of the last 3 or 4 games. And I put on my helmet when I was coming back, went out to practice that first time back, had a head-to-head collision, and got a concussion.
Hmm.
Uh, I realized after the fact that nobody, including myself, had thought to blow up the air in
Hmm.
the pockets of the helmet for the last
Yeah.
7 weeks. And maybe that was what happened, but I struggled a lot with that. I was going to miss at least another game. I kind of spiraled in anxiety and depression. Like, I can't believe this is happening. It's my last season. And it took an athletic trainer, our team's athletic trainer, to pull me aside and say, you're not the same person right now. You're acting differently. And we know concussions can do this, and let's figure out a plan. And it's something that after the fact seemed so obvious that a concussion was causing the anxiety. For at least 3 or 4 days, I was losing it. I wasn't sleeping. I didn't
Right.
understand what was happening. And so thank God for him. His name was Eric Winters. Was an athletic trainer at Denison University. And, that stuck in my mind. And I wanted, even through our time in Texas Tech, we didn't have very much at our disposal for concussion. Learning about that more at Texas Tech, and then more as a research assistant with the military, or focused on military populations rather, that led me to where I am today.
Yeah. And I have to say, Shawn, I was so happy when you reached out to me because over the years I've looked back over my career. It's kind of what old men do. We sit in our chair and we think back about things we could have done better or things that went great. And as I said, your story stuck out to me. You were a leader, and I remember conversations with you where you said how hard it was to think that coaches were questioning your character, like you weren't tough enough or you were somehow faking this or this was lingering on longer than it should have. And I feel like in some ways I did the same thing to you because there were moments in your academic career where I knew you were capable of so much more. And I had a coach who often said to me, sometimes we need a kick in the pants and sometimes we need a hug around the neck. And if I give you the wrong one, I send exactly the wrong message. But if I give you the right one, that's precisely what you needed. And since you went on, and I've seen what you did as a professional, the research that you're doing, you were honored at Texas Tech as an alum. I remember just the regret of thinking, I kicked you in the pants when you needed a hug around the neck. And I wasn't trying to enable poor behavior. I was trying to encourage you and inspire you to be the best that you could be. But given what you had been through, and you know this better than I do, the lingering effects of traumatic brain injury, it doesn't just clear up after a week and it's gone forever. We have patients who suffer through depressive episodes and anxiety for the rest of their lives in
Mhm.
response to perhaps one injury that happened on one play that they can pinpoint.
Yeah.
So, in front of God and everybody, I want to tell you how deeply sorry I am for um, kicking when I should have hugged, perhaps. But I hope you know that I love you and I wanted what's best for you. And this is hard for me to say, but um, I'm just thankful for this chance to reconcile.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, and I want you to know uh I don't feel that any conversation we had was ever unwarranted. In fact, for you can cut this if you want, but I pulled down my dissertation here that's printed because I recalled in prepping for this what I wrote in the preface, and I specifically name you. I say thank you to Dr. Leslie Taylor, Toby Brooks, Natalie Stedman, and Troy Hooper for your teaching and direction while attending Texas Tech. I regret that at times you did not see the best version of me. I want you to know that I found something I'm passionate about and will drive to represent the program. And that's a theme in my life. You know, my mom jokes about this story that in like eighth or ninth grade, my grades were slipping. They had we had a parent teacher conference with myself present, and we grew up on a small barn. We had horses and stuff, and I would make excuses to them like, oh, I'm working with the horses. That's why my grades are slipping. And my mom came in and was like, he is full of it. This is not what's happening. She took me to a Christian school with a linoleum basketball court, and all of a sudden my grades got a lot better. Um, but you know, I've noticed this pattern in my life in academia where, as a student, where I don't know, I kind of skate by until that thing lights me up.
Yeah.
And there were a few of those moments at Texas Tech that drove me exactly to where I am today. And I wanted you and my advisors at Denison to know
Yeah.
that I had found the thing that turned the switch.
I love it. I'm so thankful to hear those words, and I sincerely appreciate it. I hope you know that all of my guidance and pushing and prodding, it was coming from a place of care, and
Absolutely.
I wanted what was best for you. I want to
Yeah.
zero in on that end of the competitive sport for you. That's a common theme in this show, whether it's athletes, entrepreneurs, artists. When it ends, whether that's one play, whether that's one day, whether that's one season, when it ends, the psychological toll on that is not something we as sports medicine professionals have really given enough credence to, I don't believe. For you personally, as an athlete, can you describe what that moment or that day or that season was like when you knew in your heart that it was over, and how maybe that continues to impact your work even today?
Yeah, I think it impacts my work every day because there are a lot of careers that get ended early because of concussions and brain injuries. There are a lot of lives that get ended early because of those things. And I want people to know that this is a treatable condition. There is hope no matter how long it has been since you've had your head injury, you can recover. We have developed plenty of techniques for this. Going back to 2006 and my last concussion as a football player, they sent me to a dark room for 2 days.
Yeah.
And we know now, only 15 years later, that is the exact opposite thing you should be doing. But that was standard practice.
Hmm.
Um, you know, and I'm laying there in bed in a dark room, captain of the team, completely isolated from my team and my friends and any social engagement at all,
Right.
in an attempt to try to get better. And instead, I did start developing panic attacks
Yeah.
and, crippling anxiety. And I we kind of have two ends of the research that we do here, the kind of acute management, trying to get people better earlier from the injury, but we're also very concerned with those who have had long-term effects from the injury. We all talk and have heard about chronic traumatic encephalopathy, and that's a big focus of what we do because I want people to understand that the science is not really there on that bit yet, and yet we're seeing stories in the New York Times about athletes taking their own lives because they assume they have CTE when
Right.
in reality, man, they're probably just anxious and 15 years old and have stress and they need somebody to say, "Hey, you're not the same person the way Dr. Winters did for me." And so I think that's why I do this.
Yeah. It's a powerful why. And without a doubt, it influences the work that you do and adds a personal corner to it that other people might not have. Speaking of your work today, since you finished your postdoc, you have become a prolific figure in this area of traumatic brain injury. And that's arguably a long way from an aspiring master's of athletic training student. That's not a typical path. Ours is not a master's thesis, master's program. Was there a moment back then, maybe as an undergrad or master's student, where you realized that the path you were on was shifting from what you thought you were going to be and what you're doing now?
uh, yeah, there was a big moment. Well, actually, there were several. I, Dr. Hooper had a lot of research going on back then, and I noticed I enjoyed participating in those studies and understood, like asking why they wanted to know this thing. And then I don't remember what course it was, but there was a literature review type assignment that I dove head on into and really enjoyed. And there were GAs there that you probably still remember that were like, you know what, this is pretty good. Like, you should try to publish this. And it was like, I didn't know you could do that. That's an option. And, they helped me kind of guide towards doing that. And we did it. And, having that publication on a CV is what got me my first job in research, only a few years later.
Wow.
Um, but I thought about your show and my pivot because uh, my the story of how I got here is very interesting because you're right. This doesn't happen very often from an MAT degree. I don't think any of my peers
Mm-mm.
are in research, and I still get to hear from many of them. But I went the typical route. I ended up getting a athletic trainer position at my alma mater high school and went home to my parents' house after graduating and started that job in, the summer. And I was pretty miserable.
Mm.
And I was acting like it. And my football coach and my basketball coach were still there. And they were big figures in my life. And, a couple, 5 or so years after graduating, as the captain of those teams, I'm back in those locker rooms uh, as, a master's level athletic trainer. And I think psychologically I was back to where I was when I was 16, 17,
Wow.
18. I wasn't acting very professionally. Um, I would, I, I was reading books during practice instead of watching the practice and talking to people. Eventually the AD comes to me and is like, I don't think this is a good fit. So, you have 2 more weeks and you're
Mm.
out.
Wow.
And I was really, really, really embarrassed because now I just got canned from my alma mater high school where, my friends' little brothers and sisters are on the team. My coaches
Right.
are still there. I was very, very humbled by that. Some period of time later, not that long, because I only had 2 weeks, I saw a posting for the University of Pittsburgh to work in human performance research, collecting data with special forces military personnel.
Mm.
I was like, that sounds amazing. Let's give this a try. And having that literature review on my CV, and also having a recommendation from a Titan athletic trainer in this area, Tony Salisi. He was the head athletic trainer, men's basketball athletic trainer during the glory years of Pitt men's basketball. He, there was something about out of state students where we had to get a credit for, like a 1 month internship to keep the funds coming in. So when I went home for that 6-week period, I did 4 weeks with Tony and his staff here at Pitt, and his recommendation sealed me getting that job
That's great.
and gave me another shot at something different.
Yeah. Right. Well, we don't always often choose the path, but once we're on it, we find that alignment and everything clicks, and things that feel so forced and artificial and hard suddenly become aligned with our purpose. And that's kind of what the failure and the setback can do in a high achiever. So I applaud you for sticking through that tough season, because clearly it's paid off. How would you say your experiences as an athlete and later as an athletic trainer shape who you have become personally and professionally today?
I think this is a big part why I'm so passionate about the CTE side of things. Is I don't know what I had great parents, but I don't know what I would be without football
Yeah.
and sports in general. It was so foundational to my life and the character and the person I want to be. And I don't want that to go away for so many young men who are searching for something
Mm,
because of science that we are not very confident about at
yeah.
the moment. And I was drawn to athletic trainers, and my experiences with them were always very, very good. I liked the idea of how many hats you have to wear when you're an athletic trainer.
Mhm.
You're the extension of the sports medicine physician a lot of times, but you also play the role of, like, amateur bartender talking about general whatever with people who need to talk about things. And I remember some of those conversations, and the secret sauce to being an athletic trainer that separates them from other health science professions is the work ethic and the
Yeah.
love for sport. Uh, any good athletic trainer is a grind,
Mhm.
and I believe when I'm the best version of myself, I'll grind as hard as anyone else.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I was attracted to that in athletic trainers, and that helps me kind of push when I'm tired and,
Yeah.
the kids aren't sleeping and whatever, to get up and go do the thing that I need to do to push the agenda forward.
Absolutely. I often say that being an athletic trainer trained me to think of pretty much any other job as part-time work. And and with that comes a sense of obligation. That's why so many ATs, if they leave, they've got side hustles or other pursuits, because 40 hours a week is usually done by the middle of the day on Wednesday for most athletic trainers. And then the other piece of that is, and I hate it personally in myself. I mean, you saw a glimpse of that when I got choked up just chatting with you, but we love people, and yeah, we love sport, but uh, I would argue that the best athletic trainers I know are such wholehearted leaders, and they're not just concerned about whether or not their patient's 1 rep max got better.
Yeah.
They might not have the tools and the resources at their disposal. Like you said, in 2006, we were struggling with a very blunt concussion instrument in the SAC, or, any of the
Yeah.
the early efforts to try to standardize how we assess concussions. As technology improves and as science moves forward with the work that you're doing, we're getting better at that. And if you can couple that love for people/patients with cutting edge medical care, now you've got the best possible scenario. And that's what I love in the young professionals that I see today is they're so much better equipped with things that I didn't have. And that makes them better clinicians.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think the best athletic trainers also have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder.
Mm,
It's no secret that athletic trainers are the bottom of the rung of healthcare professions, no matter
that's
who
right.
you talk to and about when. And that gives you a little bit of grit and resilience because you know how much impact you can have. And, I try to spread awareness, especially in our modern understanding of concussion. Athletic trainers are kind of perfectly trained to manage concussion in the modern understanding. Early activity, monitoring symptoms and changes from before injury. Nobody knows an athlete from before and after an injury better than the athletic trainer,
That's right.
even the coaches.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of upside for athletic trainers and concussion management moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very upstream healthcare model, prevention, recognition. I mean, you know your patient's personality so well that if it changes, it's a red flag. Whereas if they got injured and went to an ER, how on earth could anyone in that facility know that? They don't have the blessing or the benefit of having that kind of connection to their patient. And so I
Yeah,
recognize that it definitely puts us in a unique position to assess in a way that others don't have the ability to do.
yeah,
You kind of alluded
absolutely.
to CTE as perhaps the answer to this, but I want to pull at that thread a little bit more. What is something you wish people, the general population or athletes specifically, what is something you wish that they understood better about concussion as we understand it in 2026?
Uh, that it's treatable. I still encounter people that are shocked by the notion that concussion can be managed by, early activity. I'm talking 1 to 2 days after the injury, even just as literal as aerobic exercise and for 30 minutes a day and regulating your sleep can do a whole lot for getting better from a concussion as fast as possible. If you think about how far we've come since my concussion, it's really pretty astounding. Like
Hmm.
if someone had said someone had, from the future had come back and said, you know what Sean should do with this concussion is he should be active right away and not isolate and expose himself and recover at times, but really spend some time getting stimulated and recovering from those symptoms. People that would have scared the heck out of people.
Hmm.
Um, and it's really pretty remarkable how far we've come, and it's never too late. A lot of people also think that their current situation is set in stone and it's related to the head injury and there's nothing they can do about that. And part of that is related to the narrative around CTE and the fact that there are no treatments and so forth. And so you need to understand that the brain is plastic and will respond, and can respond. And we've seen it over and over and over again. And veterans exposed to blast, to the old lady who fell off her ladder a year ago and couldn't, still is having trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's definitely amazing the pace with which we've seen the improvement. I used to say that other than congestive heart failure and concussion, everything else would benefit from exercise, and I've since had to correct that. You could even
Yeah,
argue that congestive heart appropriate exercise, I mean, it's what we used to say in modality. It's like we're not causing healing, we're optimizing the healing environment. We're letting the body do what the body does to recover. And we
yeah,
used to think, well, photophobia, put them in a dark room, minimize blood pressure. If it's a hemorrhage issue, we're concerned about a bleeder, then we want them, laying flat on a bed in a dark room for as long as it takes for their symptoms to resolve.
yeah,
But the body's resilient and it responds to the oxygen that comes from movement and from uh, just just the physiological processes that are oftentimes made better through activity. But the
yeah,
question is, how much and how long and how
yeah.
how quickly do I follow that up with another bout? And that's where you're on the cutting edge of that type of work.
Yeah, there's still a lot of work to be done, and for a lot of these things, we're not entirely certain biologically why it works. It just does, and it's rooted in strong science and psychological theory and physiology, but the exact reasons why they work, we need to do a better job of understanding. But and from there, we'll get even more targeted and more precise with how we manage the injury with every individual patient because it's different for everybody.
Yeah, agreed. Again, we're talking with Dr. Shawn Eagle. He is a world renowned expert in all things traumatic brain injury. I almost said mild traumatic brain injury, but that's the terminology changes and we have to keep up with the times. It doesn't matter if it's mild or not. It's a brain injury. No dingers, no bell rung, none of that. It's a brain injury, and that conveys the gravity of the situation. The
Yeah.
name of the show is Becoming Undone, and it's been said that nobody really cares about our story or our struggle until we actually succeed. Otherwise, you're just a failure. Nobody wants to. That's not inspiring, right? You have succeeded. And as you sit here right now, what are you growing into? Not just professionally, but as a person.
Ooh, uh, I boy, I hope I'm. This is a demanding job, and it's harder. It's hard when you're emotionally tied to it as well. It's a major benefit, but it's also, you want things to go well and move forward, and you want to contribute. And part of that is that team mentality from being an athlete and then being an athletic trainer, and that's really all I'm looking to do. And I'm trying to work really hard at work life balance and keeping work at work um, and being a good husband and a good father and trying to see, make sure I'm present because it does go really fast. And
Yeah.
I have two little boys, and I want to make sure they get everything out of me that they need.
Yeah. It's beautiful. As we were talking before the show, I certainly relate to that. I spent the last weekend in Lubbock hanging out with my two who are 22 and 20. And, gone are the days when I can strap them in the car seat and they got to go where dad and mom say.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
now we're just hoping to get a spot on their calendar.
sure.
Bless their heart. But I mean, if they were sitting at home, I'd be sad about that too. It's the point of this is to launch them out into the world to make a difference. And so,
Yeah,
enjoy it while you can. I
definitely.
asked this one of all my guests, and it's kind of an oddball one, but I love the insight that it gives me into the personality. If we were to watch a montage of your life, what song would you pick to play in the background and why?
Oh my. Uh, a montage of my life. Um, I I may need to think about that for a second. As I love music. I love me. I love all kinds of music. Um, and it fluctuates so much. I'm leaning towards "Take It Easy" by the Eagles.
Okay. I'm trying to remember. I used to do a mixtape like walk up songs for your cohort. And I
Mhm.
remember, I think you had a Black Sabbath song, if I recall. Um,
Yeah, that that
but
sounds
definitely
about right.
classic rock. I mean, so Eagles certainly fits that description. Why take it
Yeah.
easy?
Uh, that song is just I love that song as a reminder of, we can get in these modes where we are really hard on ourselves and push and uh I try to push myself every day, but I need a reminder every now and then to just take a beat and look around and embrace where you're at the moment. And this is one of those moments for me having this conversation and being on there because you don't get to reflect that often about where you came from and who meant things to you and how you ended up to where you are, and you can trace it so clearly, the line from how I ended up from my high school position to where I am now. And it's fun to do that every now and again and appreciate what you had.
Yeah, beautifully said, and I couldn't agree more. Last one here. Where can people go to follow your work? I know your H index is blowing me out of the water by far, but where can I send them to to check in on the work that you're doing, maybe at your
Yeah.
lab, your socials, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Let's see. We have Twitter accounts. I have a Twitter account at Shawn underscore Eagle. Definitely on LinkedIn. I don't think is there an ID associated with LinkedIn?
I
I'm
think
on
there
LinkedIn.
is. Yeah, I'll look it up and drop that into the show notes for you.
I work in the Neurotrauma Clinical Trial Center at the Department of Neurological Surgery at the University of Pittsburgh. But, um, more so than focus on me, I want people to understand that uh, I'm, I'm very grateful to be from here. And this is really an epicenter of concussion and traumatic brain injury research in the world. And I'm so happy that I chose this route and, people who are struggling come see us and
Yeah,
we can help. There are clinicians here that are absolutely top notch and people already do come from all around the world, but I want everyone to understand that this is a treatable thing and there are others like us around the country that you can
yeah,
come visit as well.
absolutely. I know a lot of people, the Virginia Tech folks are known for their research on helmets. BIT's known for its long-standing and impactful work.
Yeah.
No pun intended there, but
Yeah.
it's cutting edge work that is changing not just sports. I mean, rules changes come about from this type of work, but the way athletes train, the way they recover. That's the beauty of research is when we're not just learning it for the sake of science. That's cool in and of itself, but when it impacts people's lives and it changes the way people respond and recover, that to me kind of scratches the itch I've always had to serve others.
That's where I get my athletic trainer little piece in. I get a little, it's nice to hear I'm not a clinician anymore, but it's nice to work with clinicians and hear the stories of the people that this work and these new ideas are helping.
Yeah. Well, Sean, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. It's been a real treat. I look forward to continuing to follow your work as my listeners can. Last little bit, I always stitch this in. If you just introduce yourself and say, "And I am undone."
Oh, sure. I'm Shawn Eagle and I am undone.
Fantastic. All right, I'll stop it right there.